OCA. Ocala.
Diamonds in the sunset, now your time has come. A pretty yellow bird fly away into the sun.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. A lot of times we like to talk about how we have progressed. You look back in time, you go, oh my gosh, can you imagine you had to ride a horse? Can you imagine you had a dirt road? Can you imagine you had a hut to sleep in, And then you look to the future. Oh my gosh, in the future we're going to be flying places with our own personal drone that doesn't even have to be piloted. It'll do it itself. And it is true as we progress as people, technology makes the world a lot better, and it has different elements of it that you might question. As we move forward. The one thing we never predict is how we will change in the way we treat one another. I mean, can you imagine living in a place in a time when we had slaves? I was speaking to a black man who was a friend of the show who came on, and I said the good old days. One time he said, "Well, it wasn't good old days for my people," and
Yeah.
and he was right. It wasn't. We've come a long way in that regard, and in the same regard, we're coming a long way, and we've still got more to do when it comes to how we treat people who are lesbian or gay and all the other initials here. LBG, I can't ever recite them all. We need to put an S in here, Robin. LGBTQ S. That's me. I'm straight.
Yes.
Or what's the other one? D. I'm divorced. Celibate. I'm a C in here, Robin.
It's okay, I'm an S.
I'm not making fun of it. I'm just having fun with it. Okay, does that make a difference? Tasseli McKay is on the phone. Tasseli is a social science researcher for the Center for Justice, Safety, and Resilience at RTI International, formerly the Research Triangle Institute, which is an independent nonprofit research institute dedicated to improving the human condition. Oh, I love that. So she's on the phone to talk to us about a report that reflects the risk and the reality of violence. Oh my gosh. Why is there always violence in the world?
I know. It's sad.
To people who are basically one of those letters. Oh, that's why there's no S in there, because typically there's no violence against us.
Right.
Not for that reason anyway. We have violence committed against us, but not because we're straight.
Exactly.
Right? Nobody ever punches me in the face because I'm straight.
No, that hasn't
They
happened
spit
yet.
in my face, so they don't punch me in the face.
Yeah.
I'm just teasing. Tasseli, good morning. How are you?
Morning, I'm well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Durham, North Carolina.
Durham, North Carolina?
Yep.
Nice.
Oh, that's a beautiful place. Thank you for calling in. Do you know we have a reputation in the South of being less tolerant? Do you think it's true?
It's a great question. One of the things that was really interesting that we found in this project, we did this massive evidence review, and then we also did some focus groups with LGBTQ people in 4 different parts of the country.
Right.
And so we talked with folks here in Durham, North Carolina, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer folks. We talked with members of those communities in San Francisco, in New York, and in rural Wyoming. And there certainly were some differences, but I think one of the things that was really striking was that some of these experiences of intolerance, victimization, fears of violence were much more consistent across those regions of the country than I think we're usually led to believe.
Does it change as we get older? In other words, are we, as human beings, are we more likely to be bullies when we're children, or is the 50-year-old man still picking on his 50-year-old gay friend? Is he still doing that?
So, yeah, this is a really interesting kind of emerging frontier in the research. A lot of the early research in this area was cross-sectional in nature, which means, just kind of popping in at one point in time, whether that's childhood or young adulthood or older adulthood, and seeing what's going on there, but not actually following people over time. And so it hasn't been possible until really recently to answer that question. And some of the really early studies that look at that, it does seem like, experiences of bias-related victimization for LGBTQ people, or even, I should clarify, even people who are perceived as being LGBTQ, are certainly concentrated in childhood, particularly because of the kinds of experiences you referenced, bullying, victimization, and they do often kind of taper off as folks mature and enter adulthood. And I think the research suggests a couple of different reasons for that. One of the things, again, with these focus groups that the Henny Group led, that we learned is that all of the adults who participated in our groups described, it's not that victimization is no longer an issue for them as adults. It's that they've had a lifetime to learn a set of safety and self-protection strategies, and they're really aware of, in their particular communities, the context where they're safe and not safe, avoiding the ones where they don't feel safe, and even sometimes, sort of altering their gender expressions when in public, or avoiding holding hands, and kids can't do that in the same way,
Right. I'm curious about something, though. When we talk about violence, obviously, if there's physical violence, somebody hitting or worse another person, shooting, stabbing, that kind of stuff, those are obviously things we don't want. We don't want any violence at all. But I'm wondering how much of the experience for those people has to deal with being discriminated against, let's say in the bank, like getting a loan, or getting anything else in society that isn't exactly the same kind of violence, but maybe just the discrimination kind of treatment.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So we didn't look at discrimination by itself, but one of the things we did find in our review is that there's almost a multiplicative effect of discrimination experiences and violence victimization experiences. So some of these really devastating impacts that we see of anti-LGBTQ violence, in some cases, some studies found as much as a 4-fold increase in the risk of suicide among people who are victimized.
So that is horrible.
Really, it's horrible. And one of the things that the research is beginning to show is that it's not just the experience of that victimization event in isolation. It's that experience of violence taking place within this, wider set of life experiences that includes, being discriminated against at the bank, or those kinds of things that you were mentioning.
Tasseli, I wanted to ask you something. In the intro, I mentioned that little by little, we as people start to get better at things, not just as technology, but as in accepting each other. Obviously, comparing slavery days to today, that's an easy one to see. Am I right, though, that in the LGBTQ community, we as a society are getting better at that?
Well, in some ways we are, and in some ways we aren't. So there's some research, for example, by Pew, that youth are coming out at younger and younger ages because they perceive a less threatening, less hostile social climate. At the same time, when we look at rates of violent victimization of LGBTQ folks over the last several decades, people started studying this in the 1990s, we see that actual rates of victimization or disparities in victimization are, for the most part, staying the same. And in fact, when it comes to violence against and other forms of victimization of LGBTQ youth, that a lot of those experiences seem to actually be getting worse.
Right.
And it may be an interaction between those two things,
I wonder why. I mean, okay, if you were to ask me, what could I do to stop the violence against any group of people for whatever label they have? Okay, whether it's a sexual label or a racial label or ethnicity label. I would say there's probably two ways to do this, and I'm just saying this kind of as a question presented as a statement, only because I want you to respond to my statement. The two ways I see are, one, if you have somebody in your family that, and especially if it's a child, if your son reveals that he's gay and you love your son, you have to throw that in there, then you're going to be more accepting of gay in general because you've got somebody in your family, all right? And the other way is through the arts, especially I think movies maybe. Robin and I saw the film Rent.
Yes.
Rent, and Rent is it's all over the map when it comes to sexuality. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's years. It's a couple decades old already, right? But we had never seen it. I had never seen it, and to me, it really showed me. Oh my gosh, look at this lifestyle that that these are just normal people. That whatever normal means, I don't know. But I mean, they're just people. They're people who deserve to have a life like anybody else. That's the way I look at it. So those are my two observations, that if you have somebody in your own family or your own circle of friends, it's like the baseball commissioner in New York. Remember, he stood up and he supported one of the gay players. Mm-hmm. And he said, I don't care who you love. If you're loving somebody, good for you. Now let's get on with the game. Remember that guy? Yeah. Right? And this is one of those guys that you would never expect to say that. And another example is the priest who was with the fire department in New York who died on September 11th.
Yeah.
He was gay. Even though he was a priest, which I guess means he was celibate, but he was a gay priest. And they loved him, these guys. When he died, they gave him the biggest funeral. So I don't know, things like that I think help to raise our consciousness and our understanding of somebody who's maybe not like us.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think, we put a lot of focus on laws and the kinds of public policies that are on the books, and that focus is certainly merited, but a lot of what we're talking about is social climate and is culture, and culture changes not only through laws, but also in large part through those kinds of interpersonal interactions that you're talking about, those kinds of, sort of cultural change moments, a movie like Rent, and all kinds of other things we've seen in moving into popular media in the last couple of decades. I think it's really true that those are critical. And I think one of the things that's interesting, especially when we're thinking about LGBTQ young people and safety, is that at this moment in history, they're exposed to all kinds of different cultural messages at a more macro level about, maybe it's okay to be yourself. They're seeing a lot of diversity of sexual orientations and gender identities that are beginning to be even, shown on national television, and that kind of thing gives them a sense of both, their options and the possibility of, living out life in an authentic way. And at the same time, on a very immediate and local level, many youth, we know from the research, are living in communities where it's not safe to be yourself in those particular ways, or even going to schools where it's not safe, or living in homes where it's not safe. And especially because youth are, legally required to be in school, to be at home. Truancy and runaway are the focus of both those choices are criminalized, and we spend a lot of focus trying to keep youth in school, trying to prevent, runaway and homelessness. But it's a tough situation for young people who may have maybe a little bit ahead of the curve on the historical moment, in part because of some of the kinds of cultural moments that you're talking about, that they're also exposed to, even when their immediate context is not as tolerant.
And the churches have always been perceived as a safe place, and churches will preach love and acceptance, but then there are always some parishioners that will stand up and pull out Bible passages to the contrary. And that really bothers me, because churches should be accepting of everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are right on target in that. Again, it's just we're all participating in creating a particular social climate in our churches and communities and schools, and with the different cultural products we make, with the radio shows we host.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that when you're talking about, how can we make a difference? So much of it is about that, and a lot of the research on victimization and victimization prevention more generally, for example, research on campus sexual assault or bullying more generally, not necessarily even as it relates to LGBTQ folks. Where a lot of that work is going is toward bystander-focused prevention, and that's a really interesting concept to think about. I think it's actually very profound, this idea that we can intervene on one another's behalf, both in situations of immediately witnessing an incident of bullying or incipient violence, but also, that we're all bystanders in the larger sense as we're going about our day-to-day lives, even if something terrible isn't happening in front of us at that moment. What we're doing and saying in church, at school, on the radio, all of that to me is sort of bystander prevention work.
Tasseli McKay is our guest. Tasseli, we have to take a little break, but we will come back. And we do have a website to give out as well. So let's take a little break, and we'll be right back. This is The Source, WOCA Ocala.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. On this Monday, plenty of clouds along with a couple of showers and a heavier thunderstorm in places with highs mainly in the 70s. For Monday night, cloudy with rain and a thunderstorm early, and remaining mostly cloudy late with lows in the 50s to near 60. For Tuesday, clouds breaking for some sunshine. A breezy, somewhat cooler day with a high in the mid-60s in the northern part of the zone to the low and mid-70s in the south. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Tired of looking at stained carpets, dirty tile, or grout? Call Silverback Restoration, 414-5312. Make your flooring look great again. Stains, pet odors, allergies. Call Silverback Restoration, 414-5312. From serving our country to serving our community. Silverback Restoration, 414-5312. Residential and commercial. Their work is guaranteed along with your satisfaction. Check their website, silverbackrestoration.com.
Stay informed on everything going on in the Villages with the Village Spectator newspaper. The Village Spectator is exclusively devoted to the Villages with news, commentary, and more. And yes, they have Tom's Picks, a free referral for people who are looking for a company to do work for them. Tom's Picks will refer the company that fits your needs, and all we ask is that you tell them where you heard about them. Call Tom's Picks at 804-1223 and pick up your copy of the Village Spectator today.
Now read Ocala Downtown newspaper online.
Hospice of Marion County has an urgent need for volunteers to share a conversation with someone, run errands, hold someone's hand. All you need is a willingness to help others. Our volunteers believe the blessings they receive far exceed the services they offer. Will you consider serving, caring, and making a difference? Call today, 873-7441. Hospice of Marion County, making more moments of life possible.
7 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. We live in a very diverse world, don't we? And we're not strangers to the fact that we're all different. We all have different aspirations and different hopes, and we fall in love differently. And the older you get, the more you realize that it's the lesson your mother told you when you were very young. Live and let live. Love. What's the thing Jesus says? What does it say? Do unto others
as you do, you would have them do unto yourself.
I'm horrible at quoting the Bible, but anyway, that's a wonderful thing. Do unto others as you would have. What is it?
Them do unto yourself. Them do unto you. I think is one of the. I don't know.
Anyway,
that's what it means.
You're as good you're as good as me at this.
Have them treat, you treat them as good as you want yourself to be treated.
There you
that's
go.
What I
And
think.
if that's the the golden rule, then it applies to everybody. And so that's kind of what we're talking about, I guess, at the heart of this, right? Tasseli McKay, MPH. Tasseli, what does MPH stand for? Miles per hour? What does that mean?
Master of Public Health.
Master of Public Health. All right. So this is
so my graduate work was in public health research.
So what do you do? Do you help people who are in some way, how do I want to say this, being discriminated against or had violence committed against them because of the sexuality, whatever the word is? I'm learning.
My focus is victimization research, and specifically victimization among marginalized communities, so LGBTQ folks, and also some work related to interpersonal violence against women in Native communities living on tribal reservations, Alaska Native villages, and partners of folks who are involved with the criminal justice system. People who are, in vulnerable communities who often, I think, see the brunt of a lot of these systems and structures that the rest of us maybe encounter more theoretically.
How do you identify the vulnerable communities?
We use the research. There are ways in nationally representative data collections to identify subgroups who appear to be experiencing violence at much higher rates. And so some of the groups I've mentioned, that shows up in nationally representative research. And then that's, an invitation to dig into those experiences a little more, understand them, hopefully, so that we can we have the information to guide both prevention and responses. What kind of services do victims need to recover?
And you've actually done interviews with individuals and groups.
Yes. It's been a real gift, I think, the way that in marginalized folks and victims in those marginalized communities are willing to share about their experiences. I think it's incredibly brave when people are willing to participate in this kind of research and talk about their experiences. And I think part of what's so moving about that is that even people who have experienced the worst of the phenomena that we've been talking about this morning often share that same passion that you all articulated a few minutes ago, which is, we're all in this together in attempting to make it better, and we've got to figure out how to do that.
You got to put an S in those initials because if you put an S in there, then I become one of you. If I'm right,
that's right.
And put a C for celibate too, because I'm not a priest, but I'm not that busy.
We'll put the call out if you want to be
just put put an IC. IC stands for involuntary celibate. Do you know? Here's the difference between when we had a conversation with a lady from England, and she was kind of doing the same kind of a message you're delivering, Tasseli. But she used the word queer every single time, and I thought the word queer was I thought we didn't want to use that word, but I guess in England that's the word, right? Am I right about that?
I don't have a lot of exposure to English culture.
Okay.
I do know that here, within LGBTQ communities, there's still a lot of controversy over that word, and a lot of it breaks down along age lines. So elders really, had the same reaction you did, which is like, oh gosh, that word has been used as a slur against them, and they do not want to hear it. Whereas for young people, particularly because young people are beginning to think about gender in more and more expansive ways, and not as simple as like there's male and there's female. And once you start thinking about gender that way, you kind of can't say lesbian or gay in quite the same simple way, because that's premised on the idea that there are.
Gosh, it gets so confusing, doesn't it? But here's the Okay, but wouldn't it be nice if we didn't care? I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we all just treated each other nice and you, the person you love, the person you spend your time with at night, that's your business, and you sell nice donuts, and I'm going to buy your donuts, or you make a nice car, I'm going to buy your car, that kind of stuff. I don't know. It just seems to me we are hopefully heading in that direction. Tasseli, thank you so much for being on the air with us today. Leave us with a website if you could, please.
www.rti.org. Thank you so much.
Oh, that was easy.
It's been wonderful talking with you both.
Same here. RTI.org. And we'll put this interview up on the internet so everybody else can read it, or listen to it, rather. Yes. Thank you, Tasseli. We'll be right back.
The Paddock Mall Studios. This is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. How much it will cost, how much coverage it will offer. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office to issue its report today on the GOP health care plan.
If these numbers come out favorably, that will go a long way to making the case that the president and Republicans are putting forward to the American people that we need to repeal and replace Obamacare. But if the numbers come out badly, that is going to give the Democrats a lot of ammunition to criticize the efforts to repeal and replace Obamacare.
Fox's John Roberts. Iraqi forces making solid progress against ISIS in Mosul. So says U.S. coalition envoy Brett McGurk.
ISIS has now lost over 60% of the territory it once held here in Iraq and is losing more every day.
ISIS